I'm really mostly about underlying issues and resolving those kind of things, because I think the surface level things are really symptoms of underlying. And even though we may fix something on the surface, if we still have the underlying driving factor to that, it'll just show up in another way. But there's no doubt the practical strategies and tips and things like that really do help us. If we can find our keys easier in the morning, then we're going to be better off. A lot of our ADHD difficulties come from having poor boundaries or letting our boundaries get compromised, socially, work-wise, all kinds of things. You could work 24/7 if you wanted to. So now I think we kind of have to be the adult in the room, right? Before it was society said 8 to 5, it's 5 o'clock, go home, we're not paying you anymore, where you come back tomorrow if you want, right? That was the idea of work. Now we could, especially if you're a gig worker or something, you can work tons, you'd work all the time. So we're going to have to set our own boundaries and say, nope, if you haven't set boundaries, whatever these things are that you say you're supposed to do will fill the entire glass. They'll be everything. There's another little concept, and that is, it's going to sound counterintuitive, but the idea of quit before you're done, right? There's a lot of work that I need to do. And if I wanted to, I could just work, 7 days a week. It would never end, but I don't. And lots of times I will quit a particular project before I'm sick and tired of it, right? I'll do part of it, and then I'll say, nope, I'm putting it away. I'd like to finish it. I mean, that's another big deal, is to finishing things. But if I finish it, I'll never go back next week and do the same thing again, because it's just dreadful. But if I don't finish it, then I come back the next day and I say, yeah, I really want to get to that. I want to finish it. Now I'm in the position of wanting to do something that I didn't want to do before. Just an interesting mind trick, but certainly works. Probably the biggest thing that I did to cut back dramatically on the things that I was committing to doing. And the idea was to start with a very small amount of stuff that I would promise myself I would do the next day, because I didn't believe in myself anymore. So I put a very small amount on my plate and said, I will do that no matter what. And a very small amount. The first day was 3 items, and it was probably could have been done in 20 or 30 minutes. So I said, that's my promise for tomorrow. And it's difficult, but if we can cut way back to where we're delivering 100% on our personal promises to ourselves, then we can start slowly adding on to that plate. To this day, I do not schedule more than 4 hours. I'm not talking about classes and things like that. I don't schedule more than 4 hours worth of, I guess I'll call it independent work for myself, because I know the phone's going to ring, email's going to come in, people are going to call, things are going to get in the way. And I worked up to 4 hours. I didn't start with it. Successful people are generally creatures of habit. They repeat routines over and over and over again. They're not trying to reinvent the day every single day. To me, I find habits are single events generally, and I put them in some kind of linear order, like a string of dominoes. And then I say, okay, this habit, then that one, then that one, then that one. I find that really helps. I think we should set boundaries for people as well. I think that's incredibly important. And I know for myself, I changed a lot of my boundaries when I was diagnosed, because I consciously decided I was going to change my life. And what happens is people are used to you being a certain way, and some of them just can't adapt to what you want to do to change. They kind of like what they used to know, and they want to hold you in place. Happens to a lot of alcoholics when they come out of rehab, right? They've got to change their whole social structure, because the old social structure is not healthy. So I think we need to do that. Something that came up in an earlier meeting here today was basically put your own oxygen mask on first. I think a lot of people want to be helpers, rescuers, all that kind of thing. And you really can't rescue very many people, even if you wanted to, if you're not healthy yourself, right? It's just, think of the airliner, put your own oxygen mask on first. When you're handled, it's not a selfish thing to take care of yourself. Not really. It's actually almost the opposite of selfish. When you take care of yourself, nobody else has to take care of you, and you have the bandwidth to help other people that actually need it. I schedule my day. I don't use a to-do list, not the typical list of things anymore. I put the things I want to do on an agenda and put a rough time zone when I want to get it done. But really, less on your plate. The concept for me was not necessarily to get things done. The concept was to get the things done that I promised myself I would do. Because I think when we use a to-do list and we do 7 out of 10 things, we know we lied to ourselves on those other 3 things. And when we do that, we lose faith in our own ability to do things. And people read subtext really well. So if you don't believe in yourself, they're not going to believe in you either. But if you cut way, way, way back and you start doing 100% of what you promised yourself, you can always do extra. There's nothing wrong with doing more if you get that promise level done. Then you can really, affirmations only work if they're true for the most part. So then you can truly look in the mirror and say, I'm a person who gets things done. And it's true. I think boundaries they're really tough. And we can decide them, and then we kind of decide them in a vacuum, right? And then the real situation comes up, which is far more complex. And then we sometimes violate that boundary. For me, I try to, what would you call it, debrief that. If I decided something and then I say, oh, yeah, I thought I decided not to do that, and now I'm doing it again, then I'm going to kind of debrief and say, well, what happened there? Why did you go back to that? And there might be a legitimate reason that I wasn't considering before. You know, we've talked about, violating our own boundaries a little bit. Sometimes we just have to, like the pendulum, we have to swing over to the other direction and just be almost anal about being fixed on that, as opposed, and then eventually it settles in the middle and we can act natural or whatever. Another thing that's helped me, I have people in my life predictably ask me for things, and I don't know how to say no. They're my friends, etc. So in the moment, I'm just flustered and I don't want to, hurt anybody's feelings or anything. So by pre-thinking, I know the question's going to come up. I know they're going to ask me, because it happens. I'm going to pre-think an answer to that. It's really important not to make an excuse that isn't true. So we want an answer that actually accomplishes what we want. But if we can pre-think that answer, then it's easier. What I do along those lines is, my first answer is no. Let me think about it. But I will tell them when I'll get back to them, and I'll write it on my calendar so I don't forget. Because if I tell them, they're going to quit nagging at me, right? But the flip side is really crucial, and that is that you got to reliably go back to them tomorrow at 9 or whatever you said. Otherwise, they will go back to the old behavior of nagging at you because they figure that won't happen. 90 minutes after you get up, plus or minus a little, is when you're most proactive for 3 or 4 hours. And then after that 3 or 4 hours, your proactivity, your ability to decide something and do it or resist something, drops, and it drops and it drops and it drops. And, by 8 or 9 o'clock, you have no resistance to things, which is the worst time to shop for me anyway. So if I'm going to buy something, I may decide I want it, but I'm not going to go buy it until the morning, because in the morning I'll be much more rational. Plus it gives me that pause. There's no doubt we have more capability of being proactive earlier in the day. Let's pre-plan the evening and do it the way you wanted. And then if you have decisions to make and forks in the road, let's figure those out in the morning, or, when your brain's more fully online. A big part of this that we're talking about today is training people that we're reliable. Life gets easier when people believe you're reliable. It gets a lot easier when you yourself believe that you're reliable.